93. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Today I just want to pop in real quick to really explain why mathematics is the language of the universe. Now, for a lot of us, this may seem a little basic. And what I mean by basic is, we have all heard about synchronicity. We have all heard about the the so-called angel numbers, the 333, the 444, so on and so forth, right? We probably see those things every day. What's up, man? 93, 93, 93. We probably see numerology all day. You may know your life path number, if you study numerology. So many of us, are acquainted, with numbers. But it's a difference, and this is the point I'm making here. It's a difference to know math versus actually doing equations. And this is basically where I'm getting at. Meaning you may see the number 333, 222, or whatever sequence you may see. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing mathematical equations, meaning that triggered a mathematical equation within you. That's not necessarily what happens to most people. They don't start thinking mathematically just because they saw a numerology sequence. Peace, Queen. Peace, Queen. Salute to you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. You already know. So what I'm saying here is, if mathematics is the language of the universe, and we know it is, the question then becomes why? Why were the mathematical symbols chosen to represent our reality? And this is why many people believe that we are in a stimulation. Because all you got to do is look at the mathematical language. Because if you look at the mathematical language, you will realize that the mathematical symbols that we use come from magical alphabets. What I mean by that is, you have Hebrew letters that are a part of math. You have Greek letters that are a part of math. These are considered magical alphabets, but they are technically considered mathematical symbols as well that represent something. Just like pi, right? We know pi represents 3.14, right? It has its own science. We don't have to get into the deepness of pi. But that's also a Greek letter. So even though pi has its own mathematical connotations, it's also a Greek letter from the Greek alphabet. So what I'm saying here is, math is more than just the numbers. Because even when you're solving mathematical equations, especially when you go towards algebra and beyond, you have to start using letters. X1 plus Y2, things like that, right? So we see even with math, basic math, eventually we upgrade or elevate to the point where we're not just using numbers, we're also using numbers and letters. Then we evolve into symbols. So now with math, we're using numbers, we're using letters, and we're also using symbols. And those symbols have a whole meaning behind them. Again, like pi. So if you write pi mathematically, it represents 3.14. So when you are doing your equations, you will do that equation as 3.14, depending on what situation it pops up in. Basically, you have to go through this process of elimination to solve this equation. So what I'm saying here is, do not be fooled by the simplicity of spirituality or occultism. Just because it's hot, just because it's mainstream, just because, people, are getting into these things now. They will always deal with the basics because it's not sincere. And again, I'm not going to go on a long tangent about this, right? It is not until you become sincere that the secrets begin to reveal themselves to you. And this will basically be the last point I make before we get up out of here. So let me explain to you what that means. What do I mean by being sincere about whatever path that you choose? Meaning, if you are going to your grave, and I ain't even mean to go this deep, but it just to explain the point. When you make a decision as to your life path, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to follow this religion, I'm going to follow this spiritual system, and you decide that's what you're going to be for the remainder of the time you have here on earth, if that's what you choose to dedicate your time to, obviously that takes a level of sincerity. That takes a level of dedication. That's something that the average person is probably not going to do. You have to approach your spiritual path and your spiritual journey the same way. So yes, the mainstream knows about numerology. They're seeing synchronicity. They're seeing all the angel numbers. But I dare you to find them doing any mathematical equations that's going to actually solve practical problems. You have to go through a process of eliminating the equations in your life that we call problems. Problems are just equations. Every day we wake up to new equations based on the planetary attributes. As the planets are journeying and making their orbit, they produce new equations on a daily basis, on a hourly basis, right? So new equations are popping up every day, all day. So if we are not going through the process of elimination on a daily basis, you can see how you're going to miss wisdom that you can receive on a daily basis. And it's only when you begin to receive wisdom on a daily basis that you actually become wise. Because when it comes to being wise and being around wisdom, wisdom can come from other individuals, but wisdom can come to you directly as well. A direct experience, right? As we call revelations or downloads, right? We all can have our personal revelations and downloads. And most of the time it is symbolic. Most of the time it's something that you have to go through a process of elimination to discover what it's really speaking about. It's not really going to speak directly because math is not direct. That's why they have to use symbols as shortcuts, right? So the mathematical symbols represent shortcuts. That's why we have mathematical symbols in the first place. And this is the point that I'm making. The mathematical symbols give us the shortcuts to reality, this stimulation that we exist in, the cheat codes or the codes of this stimulation that we call the matrix is through these mathematical symbols because they all have a deeper meaning than the surface. And how you use these equations on a practical level will be different than how you use it on a spiritual level. So meaning, you may be able to solve an equation on paper, which is basically 2D. You may be able to solve 2D equations, but the goal here is to solve 3D equations, which we call life equations, right? Life problems. We're here to solve life's problems, to break down these equations that we are faced with on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. The only way to do that efficiently is to understand the symbols of the language in which we speak. Meaning we all speak math. Some of us may speak English, some of us may speak Arabic, some of us may speak Sanskrit, some of us may speak Hebrew. But the one thing in common is math. We all speak the universal language of mathematics. It don't matter where you are on this planet, you know math on a 2D level. So we introduce ourselves to the court to learn how to solve these equations on a 3D level. So now life is a big mathematical equation or a big math symbol that you're seeking to understand how it functions. Because all the secrets of numbers have not been revealed. We haven't even fully mapped the human brain to even truly comprehend what's really going on. It's not that we can't, it's that we choose to slow walk our evolution unless you decide to pick it up. And the only way for you to speed it up or quicken it is through you solving a personal equation. Remember, we all have 10 planets in our natal chart, meaning we all have 10 equations that we deal with our whole life, from the sun all the way to Pluto. Those degrees in your chart represent mathematics. That's why they go to degrees. Each degree has a deeper meaning. You can't just look at your chart like, okay, I'm 20 degrees Libra. I'm 5 degrees Capricorn. Like that doesn't mean anything. Or that it's enough to say that you're a Libra or a Capricorn. That's not enough. Those 5 degrees mean something. Those 5 degrees mean something different than the 6th degree, which means something different than the 4th degree. Each degree has a deeper meaning. So that's why it's layers within layers within layers within layers. And that's how we get to, as we call it, the tree of life, which is the map of the universe when you have all these things memorized. When you have all these things memorized, astrology, numerology, tarot, Kabbalah, clip off, when you have it inside you, it illuminates from within. That's when you become wise. You become wise when you become your own teacher because you are illuminating your own light. You are feeding your own light because you placed yourself on a level of consciousness to be able to illuminate these symbols from within yourself so that they can teach you their secrets, because these are living entities. So we don't just have deities out here, you also have elementals out here. That's why we have spirits of nature. But it's all based in mathematics. So meaning it don't matter if we're talking about spiritual revelations or physical revelations, it all comes down to mathematics and doing your equations. So if I tell you 1 is the sun and 8 is Saturn, and you were born on the 18th day, what does that say about you? Because you have to know the attributes of the sun and you have to know the attributes of Saturn to even comprehend what I'm even saying here. Because if you don't have the attributes, it doesn't make any sense. It is, are you talking about the physical sun and physical Saturn, or are you talking about the spiritual attributes? So this is what I mean. This is all code. Like, we communicate, but we are saying more than what we realize. Just when we say our name, when you introduce yourself to people, that's a mathematical equation. Because you can break letters down to numbers. We already know. That's the whole art of numerology, right? So, if everything can be broken down to an equation, and we already know it can, and we're constantly seeing numbers on a daily basis, on a hourly basis, but we're still trying to figure out what all this stuff means, that's exactly where they want you to be. They want us to be in a state of confusion. We're seeing a bunch of stuff and having a bunch of experiences that we don't know nothing about because we're not tapping into the magical languages. In other words, yes, we know about the numbers, but we don't know about those letters and those symbols. And this is how you speak math. The letters must become, or the numbers must become letters, and those letters must become symbols. So 1 becomes A, but then A becomes a law. And I'm just using supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet as an example of what I'm speaking about here. Meaning you have to have it down to an absolute science. Because you know that these are attributes that you can show and prove at any given time because you are living mathematics as well. So that means your name, you should be able to decode your own name based on planetary attributes, based on magical alphabets, and it actually comes out legit because it's you. So who better to test it out on than your own self? You can put in your own information And then it comes back legit because not because you have some software, but because you have illuminated your consciousness to the point where you can perceive these things. And not only perceive it, you can break it down. You can transfer light into a different form. You can transfer light into consciousness. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to transfer light into consciousness. So you can say mathematical, the numbers, the language, the symbols, that's all light. But light without direction is only going to go back to its center, go back to its foundation, right? So that's why somebody, you can be lucky one day and then not lucky the next day, because everybody goes through these cycles. But how many people actually understand their cycle? Like women may understand, their physical cycle, right? But we also have spiritual cycles based on the numbers, meaning we all have a solar return, just like we all have a lunar return. So that means every month and every year, your energy is being reset. You have a brand new chart every month, and you have a brand new chart every year. Your energy is being reset more often than you realize. But we only are able to detect these subtle changes the more we can comprehend the numbers, the letters, and the symbols. When you can comprehend those things, you can see changes on a hourly basis. So when we're talking about planetary hours and planetary days and things like that, and like how people were able to break these sciences down, this is how they were able to do it, because they spoke the language. They took something that was 2D and they made it 3D. This is not just something to be entertained by. This is a tool to help me decode not only my life, but life as a whole and life after death. So it doesn't just stop at life, it goes beyond life into death, which we call the afterlife, all the way back to rebirth. So the whole process of life and death is within these numbers, within these symbols, within these letters. Are you able to put them together so that they synchronize? Because when you synchronize the numbers, the letters, and the symbols, now you're dealing with equations. Now you can say you're solving equations because you're using numbers, letters, and symbols. And they all have their own individual messages and meanings, and you're going through the process of elimination to see what exactly this means. Why do I have to go to this interview at this time, at this location? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why you work at the address you work, why you live at the address you live, why you have the name that you have. None of this is by coincidence. None of this is by accident. There's a reason why you take a certain route, why you prefer certain streets, certain freeways, why you prefer certain people, certain locations. All that's based on the numbers. We think it's us, we think it's our personality, but if you remove the personality, remember, some energy is harmonious, but some energy isn't. So some energies just don't get along. So while we're thinking, okay, we're this, we're that, oh, it's my ego, it's their ego, some energies are just not harmonious. It don't matter what you do. And some energies are, no matter what you do. So when you understand what's harmonious and what's not, then you know what combinations to create in your recipes. What planets go together, what planets don't. What numbers go together, what numbers don't. What symbols go together, what symbols don't. What symbols add on to other symbols, what symbols take away from other symbols. See, it all comes down to alchemy. So you need to know how to multiply energy when necessary, when to deplete energy when necessary, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So that's why it all goes down to alchemy. You have to cook up your own recipe, and you have to have multiple recipes depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Never just leave it for the world to decide. Your magic must be an intricate part of everything you do. Right? So my trigonometry class is confirming mathematics is indeed the language of the universe. Exactly. You know? I'm just taking it beyond the books. I'm just taking it beyond the paper. Because school is not going to do that for us. That's the only we can do it for ourselves, right? So the world will supply us the proper foundation. The world would teach you how to read. The world would teach you how to write, how to do math. The world will give you the basics. But only you can give yourself what's necessary to advance your consciousness, which is knowing what these symbols mean outside of the textbook. What does pi mean outside of the mathematical usage? How does that apply to life? How does the Greek language apply to life? How does the Hebrew language apply to life? Because that's how the ancestors were looking at it. That's why the languages was created in the first place, or rather channeled in the first place, because nobody really created anything. We just receive. So we will continue to receive. See, that's the whole thing. We've been trained to be go-getters. We got to get up and go, get up and get it. Rarely, if ever, do we talking about, okay, maybe it's time to receive. Some equations are not to be figured out. Some equations have to come to you, or that some solutions have to come to you. And then you figure out how that solution works. That's what makes you an alchemist. So it's not about just making things work. You want to know why something works. That's what makes you different than anybody else. See, everybody else, they may be using their mantras, they may be using this tool, that tool, but they can't really tell you why. Well, why does that work? Because they didn't invent it. They didn't create it, so how would they know why a mantra works? Why that astrology symbol works or why it doesn't work? Well, they didn't create the language, so how would they know unless they're trying to get into the language, into the spirit of the language itself? Meaning you must illuminate it from within your own heart. Meaning you have to use your heart like a projector and project from your own heart center. Only then do these things begin to make sense, because now you're able to decode from a subjective level and come to your own personal conclusions based on the information you have available to you. Okay, I live in this city. Those letters break down to a number. I live in this zip code. I live at this address. It's like there's no limit to how far you can go. It just depending on how much can you handle. How much can you handle? That's the true secret. It's not about what you know and what you don't know. How much can you handle? How much truth can you really handle? How many secrets can you really handle before it just completely destroys you? Because you are forced to change. The same way people say money changes you, spirituality changes you as well. The occult changes you. Are you willing to change with it? That's the whole thing. Are you willing to advance with it? Because none of these energies are stagnant. Everything is living. The occult is living. Esoteric, spiritualism, all these energies are living. And they are evolving. Are you willing to evolve with them? Right? That's really the only question that we have to ask. Are we willing to evolve with the spirit of mathematics? Because mathematics wants you to live forever. Mathematics wants you to be abundant. Mathematics wants you to be the most supreme version that you can be of yourself through utilizing language. Not because you just work so fucking hard. Not because you figured out something that nobody else figured out. But because this is our birthright. We came into this world with these abilities. We're just deciding to pick them up and use them. That's all. So everything I'm speaking about, we already have access to. We're just making the decision to utilize it. Because we don't have to, but we can. It's all personal choice, right? 93. Your channel is a real mystery school. Nobody else will tell you that. You already know that, though. Occult and even astrology won't go mainstream because it takes a certain level of consciousness. Yeah, and that's why I exist. That's why you exist. We exist for each other. I'm just as important as you are. You are just as important as I am. That's why I always say 93. We are a collective. So just because you see my face, just because you see my mouth running, I speak for all of us. I tap into all of us. I tap into all of our consciousness. That's why I try to talk about every damn thing, right? Because we all are dealing with everything. So I have to touch on all these layers. But that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. So for all of the outcasts, for all of the people that's not in the mainstream, that's why people like me exist. That's why people like you exist, right? That's why we are going into the new phase where people like you and me actually, I'm not even going to reveal that yet. That's a little bit too, let me not go too far off, right? 25 minutes in, I can say that till tomorrow or another day. So let's just focus on the math. Get your mathematics up. Get your ability to solve equations up. In 2D as well as 3D. Start with the paper, but then elevate to real life. And see the secrets and the wisdom that the numbers have in store for you. And with that, I bear peace. Love's the law.